Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fourth episode of LGN. I'm SRC President Ben Norton, and today I'm here with SRC members Veronica Exner and Mika Sontag. I hope everyone out there is doing well, staying healthy, and doing everything you can to help flatten the curve. We are excited again for a weekly occurring chapel, and first of all, we are going to talk about SRC elections. So SRC nomination forms are due this Friday, the 29th. So get those in as soon as you can to Mr. Graff. As well, start planning out your speech. Your speech can only be a minute long for all the positions, so make it concise and creative to capture the attention from your voters. Voting will take place on June 5th, and more details will be explained later for exactly how to vote.
This week for Spirit Days, we will be having a social distance twin day. Dress up and send your submissions to the Luther SRC Instagram on Thursday, May 28th. Last week, the SRC challenged you to send in some quarantine trick shots. Here are a few of our favorites.
on the track, boy.
Now we will go to Avery as she interviews Luther's own version of a combination of Walter White and Bear Grylls. Welcome up, Mr. Hall.
I hope everyone's doing well. I'm here with Mr. Hall, the ESS teacher and one of our science teachers. Since we're all at home right now, it's the perfect time to start gardening and just to spend the time outside. So Mr. Hall, I know you have a flourishing garden and you keep bees in your yard as well. So how can someone start a garden and bring back the bees, either in a large or small space?
I think I started gardening because I wanted to sort of create 5 or 6 different food varieties that I could keep over the winter, not have to worry about buying them in grocery stores. And so I've got tomatoes and carrots, potatoes, cucumbers, which I've learned how to sort of pickle and can, and onions. Those are sort of the big ones. And I'm growing a lot of pumpkins. Pumpkins and squash really last a long time without refrigeration. And so I can probably eat them well into the spring of next year if I have a successful crop. What I did was build garden boxes, and there's some of them behind me there. So there's wood chips and weed suppression fabric between there. And it just seems like an easier way for me to garden and get at these vegetables and weed and water and that sort of thing. So anybody can buy 2x12s or 2x10s, create a 4x8 box, fill it with some soil, and figure out a watering regime, and you're gardening. What's fun for me is I'm seeing them on front yards now. This is in my backyard, but it's fun to see people pulling up grass and watering a vegetable crop rather than a lawn. And I know a lot of people like the aesthetic appeal of lawns and the green that you get with that, but I also like a variety of plants and things like that to show off a yard too. So flowers and vegetables all seem to do that. And bees, I've had honeybees in my backyard on and off for 8 years. Initially, I thought the bees would pollinate the crabapple tree just above me here, and I'd get a bigger harvest of crab apples that I also freeze and turn into jelly and things like that. But the honeybees don't particularly aren't attracted to the crabapple tree, really, the blossoms at all. But the native bees are all there. There's all sorts of bumblebee species. There's probably 20 different species that use the tree as a pollination or as a food source, and also pollinate the tree. But if you want to start honeybees, I would suggest talk to your neighbors first, offer them a jar of honey when the season's over, and then either you could talk to me. I guess I could give you a little more information, but there's also bigger beekeepers out there where you can buy all the equipment and get a starter colony from them.
That's awesome. So is there any bees, like if we don't want to, excuse me, if we don't want to become a honeybee, like a bee farmer, is there other species of bees that we could introduce to our backyard or our gardening environment that could also help pollinate?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, wild bees are on decline around the world, but especially in Canada. A lot of them are in decline because of lack of flowers, a source of nectar and pollen, but also of pesticides. So there's a lot of things. And the other thing about wild bees is they tend to be solitary. They're not like honeybees where there's colonies. They tend to be single their whole life, mate to have babies, but they spend their life alone. So one of the things that I've seen lately is there are little bee houses with a lot of different size holes in the houses. So you can hang those on your fence, but wild bees also nest in the ground. I know I've seen them at the corner of my garage. They kind of used a hole that was there under a shed. Just recently I saw a bumblebee go in some leaf litter that I have on the ground near some plants, some perennial plants. So I just try to create wild spaces and not always rake everything up. And I just kind of leave it sit there in certain areas so that there's habitat for these solitary bees. And then plant flowers, plant ones that are easy to maintain, perennials that come up year after year. Bees really like poppies. So you could seed poppies into an area. There's a plant called borage, which is an introduced species, but it makes extremely good honey, but attracts all sorts of pollinators. Sunflowers are a great flower to attract any kind of pollinator. And so there's just about anything. Berry trees, raspberries, Saskatoons you can plant in your yard, crabapple trees, those types of things. Anything that flowers, a bee will find and use.
One last question. So what's the best part about having a garden, just being outside? What's the most enjoyable part for you?
Oh my gosh. I sort of just like watching it happen. I like watching how in the spring, and it's really the first time that I've been home in most days to watch this sort of evolve. When you go to school or work, you don't see it happen, but this one's been kind of special to be here and watch the leaves bud and note that the trees are flowering at specific times, and just watch the evolution of a yard. I wish I had had a time-lapse camera to take that, but this time I got to experience it. I just like the variety of nature. I like, it calms me down. It brings peace to my life. And in the end, the garden's going to provide me with some nourishment and I know where that food came from. And I know that it grew in a way that I wanted it grown, not the way I had to buy it from another producer in a store. So I just find peace back here, I think. And you can create that in any backyard. So go outside, sit in your backyard, just the peace and quiet is really something that I cherish.
That's perfect. I think we're all going to have to just take some time outside and just enjoy what we have around us.
Yeah, what I found is this, because of this pandemic, everything has sort of slowed down and you have time. I hope there's been some, although there's lots of different ways for students to look at this pandemic and our time away from school, but on the other hand, it's given you I hope it slowed your life down to something you can manage. You get some sleep and you find that the workload is manageable, and then you can maybe spend some more time outside. You're not always indoors working on the next project or whatever, but it's done that for me, and I really appreciate that.
That's awesome. I think I'm definitely going to have to sit outside more often. Thank you so much,
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Hall.
You're welcome, Avery. Thanks.
It's awesome talking to you.
Thank you, Avery and Mr. Hall. As some of you might know, Phase 2 of Saskatchewan's plan was put into effect last Tuesday, May 19th. With the opening of stores and businesses, people have come up with new and creative ways to go about shopping. This includes things such as curbside pickups, where you can ship or order things from a store and go there to pick them up while still maintaining social distancing. Another big upside of this reopening, everyone can now go out and get their hair cut.
Yep, I definitely do need a haircut. This is getting pretty long. As well, on the topic of reopening, hope everyone had a good time going out after some businesses were reopening. But I do caution when you're going out to continue following social distancing to keep yourself, family members, and the greater community safe. I had a call with my grandpa, and we were talking about a young boy in Mississauga, Ontario. There was a news article about him, and he has a chronic illness that makes him easily susceptible to contract COVID-19. And that makes me think, if opening up too early can risk the life of a little boy and many others, why are we reopening? So I want you to consider that and think before you venture out into your community. Think about others and the people that they love so we can keep everyone safe, including yourself.
As well, the Tatler is going to be releasing one more edition before the end of the year. The deadline has now been extended until May 29th. The theme is creativity, and we're looking for articles, photos, poems, art, or really anything else you can think of. Email your submissions to luthertatler@gmail.com or directly to the Google Classroom.
In other news, Luther will be having a virtual grad ceremony on June 27th, so stay tuned for details. And make sure to check your email for information on locker cleanup and book returns.
Yep. And with that, thank you for tuning into this week's LGN. We appreciate all the teachers continuing their hard work as well as faculty. And we also appreciate your positivity in these turbulent times. We are so glad that we have a platform like this to spread out the good news. If you have good news to share, please message the Luther SRC account on Snapchat or Instagram, or you can email me directly. Still love a good email in the morning. Haven't been getting many, but I love them. ben.norton@lutherhs.ca. And with that, we'll go. Be safe and see you next week.